Hi all, this is Michael Beasley with Steward & Grow Real Estate, and this is the third video in a 5-part series entitled 5 Principles for the Passive Investor. If you haven't looked at the previous 2 videos, go back and look at the first 2. We talk about having a long-term perspective and how investments snowball over time. So if you like this content, just let us know by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. And if you really get a lot out of it, we'd ask that you consider sharing it with a friend. That would really mean a lot to us. So in the last video, we talked about how investments snowball over time. And today we're going to see how the multifamily business model works. So let's get started. What is the multifamily business model? There are a myriad of different ways to make $1 million in real estate. For the sake of this video, we're going to focus on one singular subset of real estate and only one model. Obviously, the subset of real estate we're talking about is commercial multifamily, and the model we'll use, let's just call it the multifamily business model. I'm sure there are fancier terms with a better marketing spin, but I'm kind of a simple guy, so multifamily business model it is. So let's dig into it. This is a very simple framework that I use to communicate the multifamily business model. Acquisition, reposition, liquidity, and hold. So let's start with the first one, acquisition. So for us, this model starts with supply and demand. Okay, if you understand supply and you understand demand, you'll know what type of asset you want to acquire. So in order to understand supply and demand, you have to get into the demographics. So let's get into that now. 72 million baby boomers in the United States are going from home ownership to rentership, and they don't go back to owning once they rent. So we have 72 million baby boomers, many of them are moving to renting, and then we also have 72 million millennials like myself. Half of us millennials prefer to rent rather than own. We like the flexibility, we like to be able to move around, so half of us are renting instead of owning. And then we have 72 million Gen Z, and Gen Z predominantly prefers to rent over buy. So there's a broad need for rental units, and that demand, which is broad, coupled with an undersupply of product, multifamily units, due to rising building costs and higher interest rates, all of these factors spell demand for a product which has so many leverageable benefits. Now, does that mean we just go and buy any old property and assume that the national demand is gonna carry us into greener pastures? Of course not. Real estate is all local. A guy that I follow, he's kind of like a pseudo mentor of me. His name is Chad Doty with 37 Parallel Properties. They're based in Richmond. He says there's no national real estate market. There's only a national finance market. But all real estate is local to the state level, the MSA level, the county level, the zip code level, and even to the site level. His point is this: you need to know which markets to target in order to capture that demand that the market is going to give you over the next 20 years. So once we find the right MSA, we look for the sub-markets that capture the demand of those consumers, and then we serve that niche better than anyone else. So let's get up to speed. We understand that there is demand for this product, and we know that there are certain MSAs and site levels which we believe will capture that demand for decades to come. Now what? How do we ensure that the investment is profitable? This is where your investment criteria comes into play. Are you targeting C-class properties or institutional level properties? Both can be profitable depending on your approach and your goals. For our investment criteria, we're targeting B-class assets with light to moderate value add. We're looking for places where population growth exceeds 1% year over year over the last decade, and where crime rates are lower than other growth markets comparable to that in size. The reason we target B-class assets is because that resident is more recession resistant and there's less risk associated with those deals. So that's acquisition. Now let's look at reposition. Once we purchase a qualifying asset, it's time to add value to the asset in order to drive cash flow and values up. We do this through 2 primary methods: renovation and optimizing property management. Renovations are obvious changes that can be made to the property to attract higher rents and subsequent NOI growth. Updating flooring, appliances, layout, exterior updates, maybe rebranding, putting in a new lot, all these things add value to the property to garner higher rents. Less obvious is optimization of operations. Say that 10 times fast. Optimization of operations. This can include things like efficient water management systems, timers for lights in common areas, implementing bill-back systems for utilities or RUBS, automatizing rent payments through software, etc., etc. All of these are ways that optimization can increase NOI growth and subsequently the value of the property. So we've looked at acquisition, we've looked at reposition. Now we have an asset that's performing well, it's worth more. what do? This is where liquidity comes in. Once the value of the property has increased due to the intervention of the investor, the investment is ripe for a liquidity event. This comes in two primary ways, either through the sale of the property or a cash out refinance, which we talked about in the last video. And each exit strategy has its benefits and drawbacks. Obviously with a sale, if you opt to forego the 1031 exchange, capital gains tax will be a burden which will decrease returns. Conversely, a cash out refinance, it allows the investor to harvest some of that equity in the property, recycle that capital into the next investment, and maintain control of the asset over the long haul. And then you get to realize all those tax benefits we talked about in the last video. We are proponents of the latter method strictly because of the tax efficiency of holding real estate for the long term. Okay, so we've talked about acquisition, we've talked about reposition, we've liquidated the asset, we've harvested the equity. Now what do? We hold. Holding assets for the long haul, as we've discussed throughout this entire series, is the best way to optimize your returns and increase cash flow and equity growth over the life cycle of the portfolio. Holding assets for decades allows you to pay down the debt, refinance multiple times, not just once, and use the proceeds of the liquidity event to build the portfolio or to pay for a life event, maybe college or a home purchase, and you do that without paying any taxes. It's a truly virtuous model. So that's the multifamily business model. Acquisition, reposition, liquidity, and hold. Now, we didn't come up with this ourselves. This is the primary model that investors have used for years to acquire businesses and other assets that snowball over time. It's a tried and true model that works well in commercial multifamily. So this wraps up our discussion around the multifamily business model. In the next video, we're going to take a deeper look into understanding the market and how to find those features we talked about and which resources to use to find them. So I hope you've learned something today. If you want to learn more, go visit our website at stewardandgrow.com to learn more about who we are, what we do. Until next time, go faithfully steward and grow all that's been entrusted to you. God bless. Take care.